Peace, family, and welcome to the Drapetomaniac Podcast. This is Ayapo Yapa, the HDIC, that is, the head Drapetomaniac in charge, and we're here to have conversations on how to get off this plantation. You're fresh out the womb, and your newly delivered personhood is presented to your mother so that she can nurse you, at which time she puts her hand up to shoo away the doctor, nurse, or midwife, or whoever it is who's holding you, and emphatically tells them that she doesn't want to see or touch you. You live alone, and you're awakened in the night to the smell of smoke. You jump out of your bed and open your bedroom door to see there's a raging fire down the hallway to the right. You look to the left, and there's a clear path to the front door where there's no smoke or fire. And you immediately run to the right, straight into the fire.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure that you listeners are listening to the Drapetomaniac Podcast on doayamedia.com. You are, right?
Both of these scenarios sound odd because they totally go against what we know about the nature of human beings. There's nothing more natural than a mother wanting her newborn close to her chest so that she can bond with that child in a new way after having labored with him or her for 9 months. There's nothing more natural than the instinct for self-preservation and the avoidance of pain and death that would lead a person toward a clear path to escape instead of a slow, agonizing death within an inferno. Certainly there are exceptions to every rule. However, when we hear about these exceptions, we shake our heads as we recognize the abnormality and the bizarreness of it. As human beings, we tend to be fairly in tune with when something is abnormal. And this leads to the question, why do some of us hate ourselves, our blackness, and by extension, our own people? Just as was given in the scenarios, there's something abnormal about hating oneself or one's people. So, to that end, I'd like to address someone that I was in a chat room with during a live stream hosted by Sister Ajali, the Radical Sister, on YouTube. I made the statement that if people truly love themselves, they wouldn't hate others. Something I genuinely believe. And as a side note, I say that because I believe that part of the reason why people, now I'm saying part of the reason that white people hate our people is actually due to the fact that they hate themselves, which is another discussion for another podcast. After I commented on that, someone called Torrent Blaze asked me a simple question. How does one learn to love themselves? His question was a fair one and a legitimate one. Shout out to Torrent Blaze. We went back and forth a few times, not in an adversarial way, but in a way that would require far more than could be said by either of us within the space of the 200 character limit that is the chat limitation on YouTube. So I told him I would address it in an upcoming podcast because not only is it a legitimate question, but an important one, I think. As I did research on this subject, I saw that it has so many moving parts that I decided to break it up into 2 separate podcasts, and perhaps 3. This is part 1, of course. So, how does one learn to love oneself and one's people? Let's start with this. What is self-love? Self-love is typically viewed in a negative way, usually connected to narcissism, vanity, self-interest, to the degree that the person feels no one matters or it's more important than themselves, and so on. However, in our context, self-love can simply mean self-acceptance. And that doesn't mean if you're a scumbag that you accept yourself as such and expect everyone else to. I'm not talking about that. It actually means that you accept yourself within your humanity and you realize that you are not perfect, but that you always seek to be the best person you can be. Self-love involves self-acceptance in a positive way. Self-love involves seeking the greater good for oneself and one's people in a way that does not involve or infringe on the journey of someone else's quest for the same thing. It is a difficult thing to navigate, certainly, but difficult doesn't mean impossible. What is self-hate? How does self-hate manifest itself? Self-hate can show up in something as simple as a black child wanting a white doll instead of a black doll, to an almost obsessive need to be with someone other than a member of our own people, to the complete rejection of anything physically or culturally that has to do with our people, along with the propensity to find fault in practically everything about us, while simultaneously giving a pass and accolades to a group that is responsible for more death, chaos, and terror historically and presently than any other people on the planet. I don't believe there's some one-size-fits-all answer that can guide a person step by step through their personal journey towards self-love. There is no book, no manual for it, any more than there's a book or a manual for human beings that will work for all people. That said, each pro-black, self-loving black person can tell you about their own journey to self-love. To see me now, a person would think I was always Mr. Pro-Black. But back in the day, I was a conservative Republican who was so brainwashed and blame black first oriented that I would have made Candace Owens look like Sister Soldier. That was how I started out, and it was a long, hard journey to consciousness for me. Now, I am black mixed with black, unapologetically pro-black, and I say without any hesitation that I'm a separatist. I believe the one and only solution for our people, our safety, security, and sanity is separation, and it is my mission to spread that to our people as much as is humanly possible. My journey to self-love and love for my people was my journey. And I can't say it will work for anyone else, but there are two things that are very instructive within myself when it comes to my development. Number one, I became a conservative after I deeply embraced Christianity. And number two, I started coming to consciousness after I separated from the church. I'm very specific about how I say this, because Yah is not the church. I never separated from Yah, only the organized religion of the European version of Christianity. And that is a whole other subject for a whole different podcast, perhaps. After that, I started taking a long, hard look at this country and the people in it, and the politics of it, and especially the construct, which is predicated upon a system of white supremacy. That system, and for black people, self-love, or more accurately, self-hate, are inexorably tied. When we seek to understand how to love ourselves and our people, the question may not be so much, how do we learn to love ourselves? But as Malcolm X so eloquently and unflinchingly put it, who taught you to hate yourself? I propose that along with self-preservation, loving oneself and one's people is every bit as natural as breathing. It is a thing that should not have to be taught. The fact that much of our people have got to be taught to love ourselves and to love our people should be enough to let you know that something is horribly askew. It's like teaching a person to eat, not use utensils, knife, spoon, fork, and so on. I mean to put food in their mouth, chew it, and swallow it. I have not seen one person yet who had to be taught to eat. On the contrary, parents have to be nonstop on the lookout to make sure that their children aren't sticking something in their mouth every time they turn around. This is the point I'm trying to hammer home, that it is the height of abnormality for a black person to hate themselves, their blackness, or their people. Many will deny that they hate themselves, but I submit that the issue also lies in the fact that many of us don't know what self-hate looks like, and therefore can't recognize self-hate, especially when it's internalized. So, what does self-hate look like? What form does it take? Self-hate can take the form of harsh, endless criticism of black people by other black people, disguised as legitimate critiques for the uplifting of our people. The flaw in that approach is the fact that it doesn't take into account the environment and systems put in place to cause the behavior. Would anyone look into the casket in which Emmett Till lay, see the condition of his body and his face, and say, his face and body are so effed up, why didn't he take better care of himself? Or, his mother should have known better than to let him go down south. That was ignorant as F for her to do that. She's to blame for his condition. Would that be right? Who would say that? Who would even think that? Is there any one of our people who would say that and truly mean it? You can see the entire experience of our people represented in the face and body of Emmett Till. And we aren't to blame for our appearance, figuratively speaking, any more than Emmett Till, his mother, his father, or anyone in his family was to blame for his ultimate condition. It's the harpy who falsely accused him, and the demons who murdered him, and the devils who let them go, and continue to perpetrate a system that murders our men, women, boys, and girls, on which the sharp lens of judgment should fall, not upon the family of Emmett Till, which rightly it did not, and not upon us. The condition of our people is a symptom of a systemic and systematic problem and should always be viewed as such. When I see our people acting out of character, and even those who more directly work against us, their own people, I pretty much always think or say out loud, look at what they've done to our people. And I say it with the deepest sorrow. An ongoing conversation between me and my wife is that we wonder what our people would be like had we not been tampered with. And it's a fair question with far-reaching implications, because when considering our people and our actions, there is no way to remove those actions from the context of living within a system that brainwashes, conditions, and oppresses us from the moment that we're conceived to our last breath. I often wonder what would happen if suddenly our people became free, truly free, and we went into an environment where we were not oppressed and terrorized. I feel it would take some time for us to get used to it, because in America, any black person born since the first Africans were enslaved here to this day literally don't know what it feels like or what it means not to be oppressed. And that, as far as I'm concerned, is a major thing to think about and to contemplate. The next time you see one of our people acting quote-unquote thuggish or ratchet, or even, dare I say it, like a coon, before you start dogging them out, imagine the face of Emmett Till and then apply that imagery to the person with whom you're feeling so disgusted. And instead of looking solely at that individual, look deeper and ask the question, who would this black person be had they not been born into a system that was designed for their downfall? And then turn your intense, angry gaze to those who caused him or her, your brother or your sister, to be in that condition. The instinct is to look no further than that individual and to above all say that people are responsible for their own actions. That is our instinct. We are people of fairness and justice. We're a people who at our hearts are driven by a desire to think and behave in ways that are upright before ourselves, our people, and our God, if we have such beliefs. That is our nature. And our enemy, our oppressor, uses that to their advantage by creating intricate, entrenched, and reinforced systems to create a condition and then have everyone take the blame for that ultimate condition, except those who actually created the condition. And on the contrary, quote-unquote white folks are looked at as the standard by which everyone else should be judged, instead of the bringers of chaos, confusion, and destruction every place they go, as is proven throughout history. So yes, individuals should be held accountable for their own actions, but that accountability must be measured correctly within the context of the system which produced that individual. Only holding a person accountable for their actions without looking any deeper into the reasons that they act or behave as they do is akin to addressing the symptom of a sickness without addressing ever what the cause of the sickness is. Yes, a symptom may need or even require immediate action to deal with it and to try to get it under control in the short term. But once that action is taken, there should always be further examination into the root of it to see if there's any way to remedy the issue at its foundation and thus cure the entire person and not just their symptoms, which manifest as various negative actions. And to that degree, what if a problem can't be taken care of with immediate action or gotten under control in the short term? That is the time it is most important to look more deeply to a solution at the root of it. Imagine you have a car you love. It is very rare. Only one like it in the world. On the entire planet, there's only just this one car. And your engine starts knocking. And no amount of tinkering with a few screws will fix it. Are you going to just get rid of this valuable car? Of course not. You'll take it to a professional mechanic who may need to eventually pull the entire engine apart to get at what's causing the knock, and you'll pay whatever it costs to get it back in one piece and in working order. Are our people not worth more than a hunk of metal? Are we not worth the time, energy, and effort? I say we are worth it. We're more than worth it. Something that runs directly counter with today's cancel culture. The only intervention we have is to learn a deep, abiding love, honor, and respect for our people that almost forces us to see our own people with great value and each of us as being worth saving, or at the very minimum, trying to save. Remember, had you met me 30 years ago, I would have been considered all kinds of coon and definitely been canceled, according to the standard of today's culture. But it is of great importance to understand that we are all at different stages on this journey, and some of us come to consciousness sooner than others, and some may choose a bad road altogether and on purpose and never come to consciousness. But that's not for us to determine. I don't just say accept foolishness from our people. I'm just a human being. I too see and hear things from our people that absolutely disgust and anger me profoundly. But I do say this. In terms of love of ourselves and our people, consider us family. And as family, sometimes we have the cousin no one talks about, or the aunt who's just a little bit off, or even an Uncle Ruckus. No need to hate them. The answer is to remember for all their faults and sometimes outright wrong, just as sometimes parents might have to tell a son or daughter that they may literally have to leave because they're toxic. That same father or mother who put them out, or brother or sister who watched them go, will ever hold out hope that one day somehow they will get the help they need from wherever they can get it, and that they can come back to their senses and come back to themselves, and one day possibly become an active member of the family again. I'll be honest and admit that with some of our community, I'm not there yet. And if I reflect more deeply, I know that my anger toward our own people in those ways is because I expect our enemy to come and do all they can to destroy us. But when a member of our own family does it, by way of cooning, doing violence against our own, defrauding our people, and so on, it's a level of betrayal that cuts deep. And I suspect that that is what enrages most of us when we see the shenanigans of some of our people. But I do know in my own heart that loving our people and holding out hope until the end, and that knowing maybe it'll come, or maybe they'll never wake up, but the hope will remain within me, even as I have to distance myself from them if need be. If we're going to cancel anything, we need to cancel the oppressors who have colonized, fragmented, and terrorized our people for far too long and made our community into a disjointed mess, and continue to do so. Thank you for listening to part 1 of Learning to Love Ourselves and Our People on the Draped Maniac podcast. This is Ayapo Yapa, the HDIC, that is the head Draptomaniac in charge. Looking forward to meeting you again next Friday at 9 o'clock on doayamedia.com. And until then, and as always, I'll see you on the run.
And thank you again for listening to the Draptomaniac podcast. Tune in next week at doayamedia.com. DOEAIAMEDIA.com. And again, we'll catch you on the run. Peace.